Hey everyone, I'm sitting here with Serge and Amar to talk about a new project known as the Assassin's Creed Visionaries graphic novel project. It's over on Kickstarter, the link's going to be down below, and it's our job to tell you why you need to go back this if you're an Assassin's Creed fan or just a fan of amazing comic book art or amazing storylines. That's pretty, I don't know where to go with that. That's pretty much our intro right there. So let's get into this right off the start. What inspired you guys to make the next Assassin's Creed graphic novel? I mean, this has got over 10 stories in it at the moment. I'm looking at tons of amazing artwork. It's going to be splashed up on the page right now. What was the inspiration to bring this together, Serge?
Well, haven't worked on the license in a long time, comic book wise, because we did back in like 12 years ago, maybe. In the early days of the license, we worked on Assassin's Creed: The Fall and the Chain, introducing Nikolai Orlov to the license. That later became actually a character in the game in the Chronicle series.
Yeah.
And then we did, a few years after that, we did the Assassin's Creed Brahman. And since then, we've been working mostly on, we also did like Splinter Cell. We did a few comics here and there, a few DLC, but haven't worked on the license for a while. And it's the 15th anniversary. So we thought, hey, why not do something else? And remembering how it was sometimes a pain to like fit stories into the canon, and if we were working with tons of artists trying to fit everything into the whole Assassin's Creed mythos,
yeah.
We talked with MR and we're like, how about we do some sort of Elseworlds or What If, or these visions of other artists, what they think of Assassin's Creed, and not be canonical and be like totally free to create your own vision of what you think Assassin's Creed is.
Okay, that makes total sense. You also just made me feel very old by bringing up The Fall and the Chain, because I just reread it, and in my head, I'm like 5 years ago at least. That's not that old, Fall and the Chain. I mean, but yeah, I guess that makes sense because it does the whole Clay storyline on the side there, and it's like, yeah, he was from like 2012. Yeah, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. How do you feel, Amar? You are in the head of all Transmedia involved in the Assassin's Creed franchise. What about the idea of going into like an Elseworlds kind of storyline situation with Assassin's Creed felt like the fit for you to approve this?
Well, we started out like, a long time ago with Lunac, and it's a trustful partner. And the very first time we approached them, we started to iterate on what would be an Assassin's Creed graphic novel, because most of the time, like the hard part of working on a transmedia project, whatever it is, like TV, movies, series, is kind of to find the new grammar and the language of the medium. Yeah. So how would we translate Assassin's Creed into a comic books? And we didn't want it to reiterate and retell a story that people already know, like basically adapting a game into like a graphic novel. So from the get-go, the work with Lunac, Serge, and the guys have been about creating new story, adapting like new storyline, coming up with new characters. And when the 15 years anniversary hit, we felt that it was a good like timing to do something together and to basically continue what we've started with, that kind of what if mentality of, we'll have fun. And what we wanted, instead of tying a project to something already existing or trying to enrich the lore even more than it is at the moment, and it's already a lot, like the idea was, well, what we could do is kind of a tribute. Like, let's see what like amazing comic book artists would think about Assassin's Creed and what kind of story they want to tell. So the whole idea was to kind of limit Ubisoft involvement and our natural tendency to censorship when something is not canon or is not going in the right direction or could cause trouble because we have games or things we're thinking about. So the idea was, what, if we give like a carte blanche to an artist and say, it's Assassin's Creed, your vision, do whatever you want. You want to set this up in the future, you want to revisit like a history the way Quentin Tarantino is with some of his movie, well, have fun, have a blast, and we want to read like the stories. So that's kind of the birth of the whole Visionaries concept.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. As someone who's read all of the comic books and all the books, one thing as someone who does read them a lot that comes up a lot is you guys always have to explain Assassin's Creed. because it feels like it gets a little redundant because having just reread a whole bunch of them back to back, it's like, and there's the explanation. I'll skip this page. But if it's a what if, you don't have to go as deep into explaining everything to make it make sense. I always thought the concepts of Assassin's Creed actually worked better in like a comic book format, because as somebody who plays the games, they're great. But with the comic book, I don't kind of forget that there's a whole modern day plot going on. In the game, sometimes you get so engrossed into what's happening, and then you get pulled back to go into the modern day, and you're like, oh, right. This is like a simulation. This isn't actually happening here.
Yeah, but it's true. But in the video game, you have layers. Like you're playing someone with So sometimes it can get messy or confusing. So we have to explain, take the time, and each game is kind of like we have to indeed like reintroduce like most of the concept, because we never knew like how many newcomers gonna get into the game or into the project. Whereas in the comic books, one of the other stuff that I really loved with it is the cost. Like if we're making a movie or if we're making a video game and we want to jump from one time period to another, it's literally like recreating in 3D environments and everything. And it's super costly. But with the comic books, it costs as much to go from one time period to another to just draw another page. So the cool thing is it allows like some way of, telling story that is completely different. And that's why I was telling, we have to find the grammar and basically use what the medium has to offer. And with the comic books, we have opportunities that we can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, that's one thing. Actually, bringing up the Chain of the Fall, your guys, one of the big projects you brought up, Serge. What I really enjoy about reading that storyline is, unlike the games where we're kind of limited to this is the hideout and this is the other world, the Chain in the Fall moved all across the world on his journey to find the mentor. And even with, I think it's Alexei is the name of the character in the past, he traveled a good chunk of the world. So you had like the cabin setting all the way off in the woods. You also had him running with the trains. And yeah, that would probably cost a lot of money to have recreated all of those sequences.
Exactly. That's one of the advantages of doing comic book form, is that you can have, like in this one, we have stories taking place in the future, and something completely like it's not happening in the stories now because we have present day and people traveling in the past. But we don't have to bother with that because we just can tell a story about an assassin in the future and what's happening back then. The story in the Civil War era that hasn't been explored yet, really. Or we can play anything and move around the world or time period anywhere. We could even go way back to the barbaric era of Conan. We can do anything.
That would be an interesting story, like a Conan assassin. So,
it's coming.
Well, you guys have obviously been working on this for quite some time, Serge. But what initially drew you to the franchise to pick up this license and work with it?
That's a good question.
I'm asking you to look 15 years ago at this point.
Well, the thing is that I just moved into a new studio close to Ubisoft. It's really how could you say that? It's really all events that happened. Everything happened and made it happen by itself. It's really weird. It's just we had a studio. We were meeting with Julien at that time, who was starting Ubi Workshop. I don't know if you remember that part of Ubisoft that actually published the first trade paperback of the fall. And they were doing like high-end like clothing and earrings and belt buckles.
Oh, I have clothing and earrings and belt buckles from them. Don't. As I get older, it got a little weirder to be the upper 30s guy in the Assassin's Creed hoodie. So I had to change a few things, but they're all upstairs.
Yeah. So we were doing tons of projects with them, and then my partner was mostly working in 3D and working with not 3D but with merch and sculptures and stuff like that. And I'm from the comic book era. I've been an inker colorist for the last 20 years or so, working Marvel, DC, and such. And I was forming a studio with partners like Carl and Cameron that were doing the Fall and the Chain.
Okay.
And we just ended up in a meeting and we're like, why not? And at first we aimed to do I think Assassin's Creed 2 or Brotherhood, I think it was Brotherhood that was in the works, and that's Creed 2 that just came out. So we thought about doing an Ezio story because it was evident. And then we started working on that. And after 3 pages of sample, just to show what we would do, we had a meeting and we realized how many layers of approval it would be to get Ezio to look exactly like he should look.
Yeah.
So we met with the guys from Evil Workshop. We were like, why don't we create our own assassin and then create our own backstory and tie it to everything? And then we were looking for stuff that could be interesting to explain in the comic book form, like how come there's so many Templars as opposed to assassins? What happened to the assassins that they like disappeared all of a sudden and stuff like that? And that's how we came up with the Carl and Karen came up with the story for Assassin's Creed: The Fall, and Nikolai Orlov and Daniel Cross in the present day.
Daniel,
And
yeah, that's right.
Beginning of the
Clay
story.
earlier, we were talking. So many of the modern day people that they get blurred. It's so old at this point. But I love that original storyline, and I wasn't aware like how that came to be when I was reading the graphic novel recently, because I was just doing it for our Gaming Lore channel, rereading through the whole story to kind of make sure I was current.
Yeah,
I believe in the back it has that 3-page Ezio story.
Yep.
Like it says like this was made as the original test, and then we made our own thing. And I was looking at that like this would have been so cool. But having worked with Marvel and DC and big studios, I know how many layers come from the companies with these huge franchises. I could see you being like, oh no, that's way too many layers. So speaking about Visionaries, are there any, and you said it's just constantly expanding, but right now, what are some of your favorites? So I don't want you to pick a favorite because that's just going to go terrible. But what are some of the assassins you can kind of reveal to us here?
Well, we have one of the teaser on the website you can see is one from Rafael Albuquerque, who did, he's doing a modern day story taking place in Argentina with assassins kind of getting rid of some Nazi leftovers.
I see the page right here.
That's pretty cool. There's also Pat Olaf is doing a Civil War era assassin story, and we have like, it's hard to pick one that's going to be, I think it's pretty much all going to be amazing.
It looks
like
amazing.
I said,
and you guys are so good at putting together stories and kind of keeping them online and keeping them edited. Obviously, you're letting the writers kind of have free reign on the story they want to tell, but having editorial control just to understand, okay, well, this part it still has to line up slightly. We can't completely make things up. Although I say that as I'm looking at a page with this assassin flying with the Phoenix. So I don't know. Maybe.
yeah. And that's the one that takes place in the future with like a gigantic mechanical Phoenix, or they're having fun with it.
That might be that'd be an interesting way to get the bird view going. You know, it's my mechanical Phoenix. Problem solved. We have no reason to explain it anymore.
There you go. We're trying to stay in the like keep the lore real. Like don't have like time travel. It's not time travel. That's why most of the stories are going to take place. You're going to follow an assassin, what's happened, and it's mostly going to be assassin story and not like Animus going through the ancestors and blah blah blah. It's mostly going to be like cool Assassin's Creed stories.
Yeah, I mean, based from the recent announcements at the big Assassin's Creed thing, it seems like it's going to be a lot more just assassin stories. Modern day is doing its own thing at this point, which I'm happy about. Intermingling sometimes gets it a little blurry, and like I was saying earlier, even I kind of forget we're even doing a modern day at times, and I love the modern day story. So like the fact that I kind of lose track, it kind of says something about it. But
if there's a modern day story, it's going to be a fully modern day story. It's going to be like just.
And I like that. I like just focusing on the modern day and focusing on these fun assassin stories. So looking at the different tiers you have here in the Kickstarter, do you want to go through those real quick before I just completely just start talking Assassin's Creed and we're completely off Visionaries?
Well, there's basically a few. There's like 4 different tiers basically. There's the regular trade paperback one. There's a hardcover with a little more pages into it. There's the deluxe collector edition, which will feature like a sketchbook, behind the scenes stuff, and also a portfolio of the 18 main assassins from the games that we are actually revealing like every day of the week.
Okay.
Through Twitter and Instagram and the actual Kickstarter page. And there's going to be like the Master Assassin Edition, we call it. It's going to be like a huge 12 by 17 book. It's in Europe, it's known as a tirage de tête. It's an exclusive edition, mostly in black and white, of the same content, but all in black and white, featuring also the pencils and layout and roughs and versions. it's not as well known in the States. Here we know mostly the what's it called, the artist edition, but those are mostly photos of actual original art. This is not going to be like the actual original art, but it's going to be black and white version and sketches and pencils, and that's the main 4 tiers.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking through them here, and I mean, just glancing at them, I think I'll be getting that bottom Master Assassin version myself. But I got to have all of the good stuff.
Well, the Master Assassin comes with the hardcover edition as well, in color and everything. So you basically get everything in there.
Right. Okay.
Plus, you can always choose add-ons and have the posters of postcards and another book.
All in there.
Yeah, it's Kickstarter. You can add and add and add.
Amar, you must have seen some of these things here. What in particular out of these assassins are you really enjoying? The future stories? Are you really enjoying the modern day stories that they're talking about? The Nazi one, I was going to say zombie. That'd be an interesting story. The Nazi one sounds interesting.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. No, well, it's kind of fun. Like, part of the story I've already had script for, some I had visual for, some are completed. I haven't seen all of them, so picking like my favorite at the moment would be tricky, but I'm very intrigued with, like, Serge was not joking when he was saying that there's one that is really Conan inspired, and I have a soft spot for everything Horde, so yeah. I'm looking forward to that one. But to me, it's more the fun and the thrill of discovering what an artist would do when you give him like total control on something. And it's always super fun to see what kind of history they are leaning towards to. And I'm not only talking about the kind of story that they're gonna tell, like the narrative and the script. I'm also talking about, like, in history with a big H, like what kind of thing they are looking for, what kind of part of history pique their interest. And sometimes it's about their local history and their origins, and they want to showcase something. So to me, it's always super enriching, kind of the way when you're looking at the community and the fans that they are coming up with, fan fiction and their own story. Like the angle and the kind of story that they craft are sometimes super interesting, like not something we can do in a game or not something that would have a universal appeal, but I think it's really revealing, and it's kind of one of the stuff that I really like.
One of the things I see on here, on the thing, I'm not sure if this is just showing some of the stuff you have done, Serge, but are you using some of the existing assassins? Because like you have Bayek here, or Bayek, however you want to pronounce it. Everybody yells at me because I always say Bayek. Assassin's Creed Origins. Is this from the page of the book that came out, or is this going to be in the Visionaries book?
There's 2 things. There's some artists are doing illustrations of the various assassins through the years. Sometimes they'll create their own, but like Olivier Vatin did an illustration of Bayek actually from Origins. And the other ones, like the portfolio we're going to have, it's all like the 18 main assassins from the games and from the DLCs and stuff like that. So yes, we're going to be featuring also like the known assassins.
Okay.
But same thing, if someone tells a story, like let's say with Eivor from Valhalla, it's not going to be canon still. It's still his vision of like a Viking lore story, and he wanted to play with that character. So we're not gonna force them not to. You have to create your own. No, if they want to play with someone that's existing, they can play with that too.
Right. Well, and that's what I wanted to ask Amor. If any of these are super well received, are you going to Killing Joke any of these and maybe work them into the canon? If they're using primary assassins that we know, instead of
okay. Well, like we have the good old like nothing is true. So there's always a way when there's a will. So we could find an angle. That's what happened with the comic book previously, but it was already established that we would try to get everything to remain consistent with the lore and what we're doing. It could be hard to track like every single stuff happening, but of course, if there's a story that is super appealing, and if it's something that people like, there's even no reason why not to do a spin-off or something like that. That's always an option. So we'll see. Yeah.
Wait, so if I heard you right, are you saying that the Fall in the Chain, the plot with it's not Clay, it was why am I forgetting? I literally just read it like a week ago.
With Daniel Cross.
Daniel Cross. Yeah, that came from the comic. I just thought it was in the game.
No. It was in the comic. Like, it was a character
Yeah, it
born
was
in the
created
comic.
in the comic and then integrated in E3, I think.
Because I just thought the way you had said it, Serge, I thought it was like, oh, well, they kind of mentioned him in the game, so the comic expanded on him and told the story. I didn't realize it went the other way. I love when that kind of stuff happens. Yeah, the story is really interesting and really good.
And we do agree, and that's why it ended up in the game. And that's why it's hard and important to us to find the right partners. Because there's like something we're giving them away. It's like, you know, that whatever you're gonna say, like, fans gonna look at it as being canon, and they're gonna expect for us to notice it, to do a nod or wink at some point, or even more. In the case of Daniel Cross, it was way more. Like, the character was modelized, integrated in the game. It was part of the plot. So
yeah. Okay, because that's one thing I've always told people, which is why when you guys said this wasn't going to be canon, because people are like, oh, well, you know, Assassin's Creed, it's not all canon. I'm like, it's all canon. Even the movie is canon the whole timeline. I was like, so when you brought up that this isn't canon, I'm like, I don't think they've done anything else that isn't canon. Because even if it only hints at things, I think everything is canon.
There's not a lot of things. There's a trilogy of novel that was due in China, and because it's novel and it's local and it has been written by a local author, we just validate like the overall plot. And what we said is, well, there's maybe elements that we're going to reuse in the franchise, names, character, but we're not tied to whatever they're going to do. But like, the vast majority of things, from the manhwa to the manga to the webtoon you're seeing, like, everything is canon.
Right, and I've read through most of that. But when people ask, the only thing I tell them is like, I'm pretty sure the app game isn't the current one. One with the chippy, and they run around. Yeah.
No. That one is a fun one. It's more of a what if, like, management game. Like, on
that's what I was like. I'm pretty sure that one's not canon, but everything else, as far as I know, is canon.
The vast majority of it is. Yeah.
I've also been playing that one as well for quite a while. So. So yeah, I mean, there's not much more to really go in. Do you want to add anything to this, Amor? I feel like we had you here, and I didn't, when Serge answered most of the core questions. Do you want to add anything really to what's going on here?
Maybe one thing. It's an interesting, important one. Like, slash both of them. It's the thing that a lot of people are asking: why is Ubisoft going for a Kickstarter? And the answer is Ubisoft is not. Studio Lunac is. It's a licensing project where we trust our partner and we want to support them, and it's Studio Lunac, but they are paying by themselves. Everything is run by an independent studio, and it's not a case of Ubisoft not putting money on the table. We've seen it before, and we know that Kickstarter is a driver and a good business model for external partner. We've done it with board games. We're going to do it again. It's something that is relevant to certain fields. Comic book is one of them, and that one is kind of a love project and a love letter from Lunac to Assassin's Creed fans and to amazing author. So it's very important for people to understand the whole idea behind it, which is like the amount required is necessary in order to have all of the thing funded and then the project moving forward. And it's not about Ubisoft wanting or not wanting it. Like, we want it because we're giving away the license and we're working with Serge and the guys, but it's not an instant buy, and Ubisoft is not a publisher. We are not publishing books. We are making video games. Everything else is not by ourselves. So that's a question that is, at least we got it a couple of times per day, of why Ubisoft is not putting money on the table. It's like, well, because we're not purchasing anything. It's not a Ubisoft project. It's the Studio Lunac one.
Yeah. And I actually didn't even question that myself, because we see this a lot in the comic book industry where people want to take their project and go over here. And even if they're using big licenses or big projects, that doesn't mean that the big project is being headlined by the big company. I'm trying to figure out a way to word that doesn't sound like
but it's muddy water. But you're absolutely right, and you have that habit because you're coming from the comic book industry, and we do also. But we realize that a lot of people, from Assassin's Creed fan to newcomers, they don't really realize how everything is working. Some were even questioning like the legitimacy of all of it. We're like, when Ubisoft's going to find out. Like,
oh yeah,
we kind of already have.
We're well aware, everyone. Like I backed the board game without even questioning it. I was like, oh, somebody else is making the board game and they got the license from Ubisoft and that's how it's going to work. And that's just,
That's it. That's
yep,
exactly it.
that's what it is. So this is a project that I very much want to see completed. So I definitely want to see this promoted as in many places as I can, which is why I decided to try and help out and get you guys going with this. Because I am a huge fan of Assassin's Creed. If you're watching this on Comic Story, or absolutely, I'm not 100% sure where this went up, but wherever we're watching it, this is here because I want to see this come to fruition. So help us, help them by going to the Kickstarter and getting it going. Even if you just want to get the low thing, because I can vouch as someone who has read all of these books, including The Fall and the Chain and Brahmin and everything else that has been put out, even the ones that are, I'm not going to say which ones because I don't want to make enemies, even the bad ones I've read, they're all still better than most of the stuff I've read. So I highly recommend checking this stuff out. So I'm going to give you guys a link down below. There should have been a whole bunch of images popping up on the middle of this. I hope it excited you. And yeah, thank you for being here, Amar. Thank you for being here, Serge. You guys have answered all the questions. Yeah. And yeah, that's the end of this little segment here. I'm not sure what's going to get plugged in, but if it's on its own so that Dan has it, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and go to the Kickstarter down below.